Welcome to the Guiding Brands podcast with your host and chief guide, Karen Vick. This is a podcast for service-based small businesses who want to get a handle on their marketing so they can attract and gain new customers. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Guiding Brands podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome David Rush. David is the COO, of Access Virtual Staffing and the author of Remote Power. He helps entrepreneurs scale with world-class virtual assistants. He builds systems that actually work. I need him in my life and grow without burnout. David has coached executives at major investment banks. He leads the Morning Rush business community and brings a blend of operational clarity, leadership, insight, and a faith-driven mindset to everything he does. So I just want to say thank you again, David, for agreeing to do this. We've had a couple of conversations over the last few months in our networking setting, and I'm just grateful to have you here today. If I know your bio is very long, and I just got the short version of it. So if there's anything that you want to add, you want to share with the audience, please feel free. Tell us a little bit more about David.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. And no, when I heard that bio and I wrote it initially, it's sometimes you have those moments where you say, "Oh, wow! Like all of that has been part of my life," and that's why I even reflected when you asked me the questions and asked for the bio. It's like this is beautiful. Thank you for having me because I love. Sometimes it's nice to have a little reflection on where
Mm-hmm.
we've been and also the vision of where we want to go.
Nice, nice. Well, I'm glad that you shared all that you did. I know a little bit more, and hopefully, as this conversation goes on, the audience will actually learn even more about you than I shared in the opening here.
I'm
So,
nervous. I'm nervous. I don't want people to know about me.
oh, come on, stop. Knowing you, I don't know about that. Anyway, so David, today our conversation is centered around what you do, virtual staffing. And in my other life, I work with nonprofits and small businesses, and budget is a challenge for them. So before we get into anything relating to tactics or anything like that, can you tell us, why you even started this or got involved in this business? What motivated you to do this?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And certainly as people find out about it for the first time, it's like, wait, what are you talking about? And I was introduced to this many, many years ago. People in this example in the Philippines who do great work and can support you in your work and your initiatives, whether it's like helping you build social media presence or doing accounting work or doing just simple email admin type things. And if we think about the pricing of it, it's not as costly as hiring somebody who might be in the U.S. So initially, somebody was helping me just do my social media and my YouTube. But what really spurred what I'm doing now were a couple of things, but one in particular. I had a conversation with a woman who had worked for me years ago. And a couple of years ago, she reached out and she said, David, I just want to let you know that I'm going to start my virtual staffing agency, my own agency. And I had like when I had experienced the value of what some of the virtual assistants I had used did for me, I said, man, like I'd love to start an agency someday. So I entertained that conversation with her, and she started actually doing some stuff for me on the morning rush, and we had a couple of people, and then we were having a conversation with another man, Jim, her, and I, and she said, because I like to ask the questions, and you may ask me some of these questions, but I said to her, I said, why is this important to you, and like what's behind it for you?
Hmm.
And she got into one of the most like deep, heartfelt, tears coming to the eyes. She said, I'm paraphrasing, but there are a lot of mothers in the Philippines, whether single or still with their husbands, that are simply trying to put food on the table. And if I can help them learn some simple skills that they can earn for their family and put food on the table, that's what's on my heart. And so when I heard that, man, tears were coming to my eyes. And in that moment, I think God touched me in some ways, not to sensationalize it, but it was like, that's something that I'm putting on your heart too. And
Hmm.
no less than 2 weeks later, the founder of Access Virtual Staffing, he and I were in a conversation, and one of the first things he says to me, he says, I'm thinking about starting a virtual staffing business. And I said, what'd you say? And then I told him this story.
Right.
And the next day we were in his office talking about it. And he said, all right, do you want to run the business? And I said, okay. And that's a year and a half ago.
Wow. Wow. So, I mean, that's incredible because not everybody gets an opportunity to have a simple conversation around an idea or a thought or something that they feel deeply about and turn it into a business, an organization, or a thriving one that is too, you know. So kudos to you for doing that, and and listening to that small voice, and paying attention, because often we don't really pay attention. We gloss over stuff. So yeah, but I think in your case it was very evident that this is what you were supposed to do. If 2 weeks after your initial conversation, this opportunity came up. So good for you. Good for
Yeah.
you. So so then the next question I want to ask, it's like, what are, because I've had conversations over the years, even for my services, for my business, and how to manage my admin tasks. I am a do it all kind of person, and I always wondered if I could afford it. And so, in talking with you over time and learning more from you, I realized that there are a lot of misconceptions around, what virtual staffing is and how it can benefit businesses. Can you answer or talk to some of those misconceptions that you've come across, or objections you've heard from business owners when you talk with them?
Yeah, I think one of the misconceptions that it's maybe not, it's a little different these days because of AI. Now, sometimes, and I've noticed it regularly, when I say virtual assistant, they think AI assistant. So immediately
Mm,
they're thinking it's not even a human being that is the virtual assistant. They also don't know, understand, or realize oftentimes the depth and breadth of the talent that is available. Sometimes it's, oh, somebody who can, I don't know, work my calendar and answer a phone. Yes, there's a lot of great people that can do that.
mm-hmm.
But the different kinds of roles we've placed people with, whether it's high level GAAP US accountants that help manage accounting teams inside of a US business, or somebody who can handle high level global logistics for a company and shipping and different things like that, to high end landscape architecture design systems that just baffle you, the level of expertise that we've found. So that's where there's some common misconceptions, like, and to think about those positions I just named being $5 to $10 an hour, where if you had to find those people in the US, even at an entry level job, 50, 60, $70,000 a year you'd be paying. Like, that's a significant difference. And we did the math with our insurance business, which has been using virtual assistants now for 10 years. It's in the $5 to $10 million of savings because we use over 50 to 60 virtual assistants for the insurance business alone.
Hmm. So then, well, I'm not to get political or anything like that, but a lot of people listening to this podcast may say, but you're a U.S. company hiring foreign, based people for these roles when there are able-bodied people here in the U.S. who could do this. Yes, you'll be paying more, but what about staffing from the US? Have you come across objections like that? And how would
Well,
you respond to it?
a question we often get relative to that is this to replace my current employees? And the answer is absolutely no. What often happens, and I've had this experience in my own corporate life and career, is a lot of times we're hired to do one thing, but then we're stuck doing a lot of administrative things that occupy a lot of our time and pile up. And then oftentimes what we were hired to do, we don't have the time, the energy, or the bandwidth to do it at the level we're capable of. So one of the things that we will say to owners and their teams is we're not looking to replace anybody. We're actually looking to free you up so you can do the thing that you were hired to do at the highest level that you can do it at. The other thing, which is interesting, a little different twist on the question that you're asking is I can't tell you the number of times that I've talked to an owner and they say, I just can't find good workers, people that will
Hmm.
show up on time, that will show up consistently, that will do a good, hard day's work. And so that's something that is interesting in the competitive landscape. These people in the Philippines are literally, as I said earlier, looking to put food on the table for their kids. And talk about loyalty, when they find somebody who treats them well and takes care of them, this is somebody who will work in and out, the hour in, hour out, but like they want to be with you for life. Like they literally
Hmm.
want to be a long-term part of your business. And that's something that's hard to find oftentimes from a US employee as well. And we can get into a whole other kind of conversation about, you know, maybe people who are younger coming into the workforce and what they will and won't do and their work ethic
Hmm.
and a lot of different things culturally that have unfortunately shifted in more
Hmm.
recent times.
Interesting. Okay. And I get that. I get that, so well, and okay, let me ask you this, because I've also heard you talk about, because I think one of the misconceptions is that you would only have one virtual staff, whereas you can actually have a team, right? You can have a team of people. So can you speak to that? What does that look like? Having a team of people working for your business, and would a company of maybe five or less benefit from having a team?
Yeah, well, I'll reference a book that I highly recommend everybody read by a man by the name of Dan Martell. He wrote a book called Buy Back Your Time, and he coaches solopreneurs, he coaches small business owners, he coaches medium sized business owners. But what he says is we all, as business owners, like have a zone of genius. There's something that we love to do that we're really good at doing. The problem is when we open a business, now we've got to do a whole bunch of other things. Like if I'm just a executive leadership coach, which I am, and in a small portion now, but formerly a much bigger percentage of my time, like I loved doing executive leadership coaching and communication coaching, and like that's where I wanted to operate. However, when you start your own business, now how do I
And a
find
bookkeeper.
clients? How do I do social media marketing? How do I do my
Mhm.
invoices? How do I do that? Now, as I count off the fingers, all of a sudden, where I want to spend my time is not where I'm spending my time. And then if I am full time, now nights and weekends are for all that other stuff. And he said, there's a calculation he'll have people run. What is the value of your time? If your
Mhm.
hourly rate with a client is anything more than $10 an hour, then that's what you should be spending the most of your time doing. And all this other stuff that you can hire people for less than $10 an hour, why would you be doing it? That's the
Mhm.
question. Even if you're charging $20 an hour from your clients, like you want to spend all your time there, there's no reason you couldn't afford a $10 an hour employee. And so that's
Mhm.
where his principle is like we spend way too much time and energy in things we shouldn't be doing that we could outsource, and you can make that calculation. What's the opportunity cost of your time and energy versus actually making it financially viable for your business?
Hmm. Okay. So, all right. So, I'm going to give you a scenario. So, a nonprofit organization, they bring in revenue about, say, $2.5 million a year. Um, how can you justify them, because they still need staff, especially if they are social based, or social driven organizations that have to be on the ground, and there's a lot that they're doing, in person activities and things like that, so the budget is really small. And then you still need to manage this process. You can't just you have to teach, you have to train these people on the work that you do and what your needs are. How have you seen this work in organizations of that type?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily work, virtual assistants work versus other people work. A lot of times it's voluntary. So if you have a volunteer base, that's important too, because a lot of times that will help drive a lot of nonprofit organizations. I just got added to the board of a nonprofit organization, which I introduced you to Share of Skirt Strong, and we're actually in the formation stages of it. And
Hmm.
you have to think about what revenues do you have, or what resources do you have, and how can you best employ them. So it's not the answer for everybody, but if you have to hire a team and it's for social media marketing or some kind of thing that you can easily build a SOP, standard operating procedure, for, and have somebody learn how to do it at a high level, then it just depends on who is that person you're going to hire and what's the most cost effective way to do that. This is one of the most cost effective ways to hire really good talent.
So, which roles would you say are would benefit a small business or a small nonprofit like that? What roles, if you could, like the top three things, 3 to 5 the roles that you feel would best serve those types of organizations?
I think one, for any executive or any leader, it's what we said earlier. So I think basic admin. Can they help with their emails, their calendar? Can they help with scheduling? Then can they help with logistics? Can they help with basic follow-ups? Can they help with sending out basic materials and logistical, organizational, operational type administrative activity, so to speak. So I think that's one, executive administrative assistant.
Hmm.
Most times those people, because they're so highly capable and functional, they could also help with social media management. So if you do have some kind of posting or some kind of approach you're doing on social media management, when they're not helping with the logistical admin stuff, that person actually can manage your social media as well.
Hmm.
Many of them are also good with CRM management, website design, sending out newsletters, and different things like that. So what I often say to a leader is, what's your biggest pain point and bottleneck that you don't want to be doing? And that's where we'll dial in first. We'll say, like, this is what the biggest need is for the organization or the individual. We'll fine tune that, find that, and then from there we can branch into other roles. But as an example, if you want to talk about team, you could have somebody who's managing social media. You could have a video editor who's actually editing all of the videos that you're making on your podcast, or otherwise. So the video editor hands over to the social media manager. We might have a database and CRM manager. So now we've got a bunch of different people that are inside the whole operational infrastructure of the marketing team. And now they're one unit that you manage, and then you don't, all you have to do is do an hour long conversation. This could be chopped up into 20 different
Hmm.
deliverables, and they go, because there's a system behind them and they're integrated and organized, SOP. Now that happens, you wake up the next day and all of a sudden it's posted and liked and all kinds of things online.
Okay. All right. All right. You've made the case. Okay. So I'm going to ask you, and every guest on the Guiding Brands podcast is considered a guide themselves. I'm the chief guide and everybody's a guide. So for this first segment of this um, recording, I want to ask you, what is one simple practical step that a small business owner or a nonprofit exec can actually take to help them determine if this is a good thing for them? What would you suggest?
Well, I'm actually going into one of our clients' organizations as an example, and I'm going to do a full audit of their team. And so I think for any individual or any team or organization, you want to understand like what are they using their time most efficiently the way that you want them to be? If the answer is yes, great, nothing to do. But most I haven't met an organization that is running at optimal levels, not because they're not good leaders and not because they're not good organizations. It's just a kind of a fact of growth and a fact of business that there's leakage. There's things that we're not doing as well as we'd like to. So that's what I often say is like where's your biggest stress points? Where are your biggest pain points? Do a self-analysis, do a time audit and say, this is where I want to spend time. This is where I shouldn't be spending time. And those answers to the pain points, the bottlenecks, and I don't want to do this. This doesn't make me feel good. And it's not the best financial use of my time, or it's not a revenue generator. Let's find somebody else who can do that to free you up. Because when we're free, and we don't feel like we're weighed down by everything else we have to do, we're one, a lot more creative, two, a lot more productive, and like we enjoy. And when we enjoy, when we're enthusiastic, when we're lit up, other people sense that energy too, and it will vibrate through whether it's our organization, our clients, our conversations, our podcasts, all the different things.
Okay. All right. Reasonable. So, all right. Um, so what you're saying is essentially that anybody thinking of hiring someone, and it doesn't even have to be a virtual staff. It's anybody that you're wanting to hire. You first have to make an assessment. You have to do an audit of your needs and ensure that you're making the best decision for yourself and your organization. So okay, thank you.
I'd
So
also suggest, because this is something I see with a lot of leaders, is a lot of times as leaders, we're often the ones who are the visionaries or the ones that are like spearheading and pushing things forward. And
mhm,
we need to discover and uncover what our zones of genius are. Like, where do we really want to operate? So that's some of the soul searching too. What I also recommend is we often try to figure it out ourselves, find somebody who's a good sounding board, who can ask questions like you're asking me, or just someone who's a really good coach or listener to have that conversation with. Because sometimes we try to figure it out
mhm.
or do it all our own, or listen to a podcast or listen to a book or read a book or whatever it is. But when you get someone who's really skilled at this, I think it exponentially increases or decreases the amount of time it takes for you to get to those answers. So
Mhm.
find a resource, find somebody who can skillfully work with you to uncover some of that stuff.
That's a good point because we as leaders often we have blinders on. We know how to do this one thing this one way, and somebody may come in with a different perspective and experience in solving that same problem. So makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's one of the things I've learned for myself over the years, but it's continuously reinforced by the founder of our business, Phil, because he has all kinds of ideas, and we say, all right, let's try this out, let's run with it. But one of the things I appreciate and admire about him is he continually says, like, I'm willing to be wrong. Like, let's be wrong, but let's figure out we're wrong rather than just not do anything, or rather than sit and stay where we are. Sometimes we have to, entrepreneurs or leaders, we have to risk being wrong rather than staying inside a comfort zone, because we really don't grow and discover unless we go out and make some mistakes too. Yeah.
Hmm. True. True. Mistakes are not failures. They're not the end of the world. They're opportunities. Yeah. Awesome.
That's
Thanks.
it. Thomas Edison,
So
how many times did he try to light a light bulb? Thousands, right?
right. Right. That's all for this episode of the Guiding Brands podcast. I look forward to sharing with you again next week, so please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Thank you, and bye for now.